All right, welcome to this video. I'm Kristian and I am the lead graphic designer on Lunar Wars, this tactical miniature war game. And I am sitting here in Roskilde today with Soren, the developer behind Lunar Wars. And we're gonna have this little chat about the minifigures and the factions and the thoughts behind the game. I've collected a list of questions that we can talk about, and we're gonna run through them and have a nice and cozy chat about this new game, which excites the both of us.
Definitely, Kristian. Yeah, thanks for having me here,
yes.
And thanks for preparing the questions. And I hope we can answer some of the many questions that people might have when they look at the game, and just open the door a little bit to what Lunar Wars is and what we're offering here on GameFound and Kickstarter this year.
And let's just get into it. What inspired the concept of Lunar Wars? Was there a particular moment or idea that sparked out the project?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, there's always this moment of conception where you can really, where the idea goes, clearly into your mind, and you see, just a glimpse of what it is you want to do. And for me, that was back in 2022. I've just had a successful Kickstarter with another game, a historical skirmish game called Eagles of Empire. And I started to imagine a future where I would actually be living of being a game developer. And back in 2022,
because that's the thing you love to do.
I mean, I've been playing since I was 12 years old, so the last 35 years or something. And I love miniatures. I love wargaming, and it's painting. A huge passion of mine. And I love painting. So, been running Eagles of Empires for some years now, and that game has a huge player base now, and especially in the US, where it's also at conventions. So it's like, okay, I'm gonna deep dive into a real dream project for me, which is space. I've always been so fascinated by space, and as a kid, I kind of discovered that maybe one of the key inspirations for Lunar Wars was actually some toys I had when I was a child that was called Starcom, which was this astro kind of sci-fi universe with astronauts fighting in deep space, and it was the most coolest toys with magnetized spaceships, and they had really cool visors where you could see the astronaut's face, and that's something that I thought, okay, I'm gonna implement that in a miniatures range. So, but for me, back in 2022, is all about the Artemis mission, which was all about the news in Denmark, because we have two Danish designers who have been attached to the Artemis project, because they're going to do a 3D printer which is going to travel to the moon and be used to print bricks and all kind of tools for lunar colonization. And that just really sparked it for me, like, okay, so
you chose the moon to the battleground, to the
because for me it was so fascinating that we're now in a pipeline where humanity is going to the moon, and that hit me back in 2022. I was like, okay, I gotta do a skirmish game that's set on the moon, and it has all the implications of some of the big spacefaring nations going to the moon. What's going to happen when they settle bases up there? Are they going to be friends? Are they going to end up, being a big fight up there? And then also, that made me understand that, okay, so what are they actually looking for on the moon? What is the key drivers behind the moon? Okay, of course, there's science and all that stuff, but there's also key resources which are really, really important. For instance,
helium-3, as you mentioned in the law,
Yeah, helium-3 is one of the key drivers. It's a very exotic isotope which you can't find on Earth, because Earth has an atmosphere that protects helium, but on the moon you have no atmosphere, so helium gets burned by the sun, and it breaks down into an isotope which you can use to create clean nuclear power. And for me, that created such a scenario that there's so many wars on Earth that's been started on natural resources and colonization.
Yes.
So I'm like, okay, if they start going there and they find this resource, it's going to break out. All hell's going to break out.
The next colonization war.
Next big push for colonization and resources. Yeah, it's going to be a scramble for resources for sure.
Yes, and talking about the minifigures, some of the wizards in a project like this is the sculptors. And I know you chose to actually work with two different sculptors in a way to make the factions different from each other.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was I think a conscious choice from the beginning to engaged two different designers, two different sculptors to really have a clear differentiation in the language and the design of the factions. So, and I've been incredibly lucky to find two amazing guys that put so much energy, and a huge thank you to both of them. Rafael Machado, a really talented Brazilian sculptor who did Was Cosmos, and the legendary Bob Naismith did the US Lunar Core. It's been a huge pleasure to work with both of them. And
what did they bring to the project?
Well, I think let's start with Rafael then. I mean, Rafael had we wanted to create a faction which basically had gone to the scrapyard and found a lot of old Soviet stuff. And we wanted to integrate that in the form language. So we started out with, just basically looking at old Soviet scrap things. We Googled, what would it look like? How would we design it? How would we build it up? What would weapons look like? Because obviously they wouldn't, go around with old World War II rifles. They would have space rifles, but, old 50s, 60s styled helmets. So that was one of the processes with Rafael. Whereas with Bob, I felt that with his level of experience in terms of designing, with his the creative pool which he brings to the table, I just felt like I just gave him a very short prompt and said,
just do
think like US Lunar Core, give me that, and he's like, I'll do it.
Yes, and talking about the sculptures, we actually got this little video from Bob Naismith, who brings his thoughts about being a part of this project. Let's see what he says.
That's for the video.
Bob Naismith here, just a quick one to say how very pleased I was to work with Soren and the gang on the Lunar Wars project. Just an amazing idea, amazing concept. So pleased that Soren contacted me and asked me to get involved. I have thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to seeing it come to fruition very soon indeed. I hope you like it too. Thank you. Bye.
And both factions feel like astronauts. It's like with baggy clothes on. It's not like in 40K when you have this very futuristic shields and all.
No, I mean we wanted them to still have a astronaut DNA, a visible astronaut DNA. I mean they are combat astronauts. They are Astro Marines or Roscosmos Marines. So they are troops, but in spacesuits. So we wanted it to have a closeness to reality. We actually looked a little bit at the Artemis mission spacesuits just to get a feeling of what, because they are different from what you see in the Apollo missions, where they were very chunky and there were a lot of metal pins inside, to hold it together. But the spacesuits today are a little more slim. They're closer to the body, but still with a lot of protection and so on. We took a look at what would be the four. I mean, initially I wanted to do 4 factions, and then at some point during the development stage, we said, okay, we have to start out with 2, which are going to be the lead factions, and then we're going to follow up closely with another Kickstarter next year with 2 complementary factions. And we took basically a look at spacefaring history, and we also took a little bit of a look into the future, who's going to be affecting the space race in the future. And with that scope in mind, we decided on going with the European Union, with Roscosmos Russia, and with Lunar Core, US Lunar Core as America, and also with China. So those 4 factions are the main factions that is going to be in Lunar Wars.
So you mentioned that there's going to be 4 factions in the 2 first core games that are going to come out. How are they going to play differently on the tabletop? Which kind of player will enjoy each faction?
Yeah, I see what you mean. So basically, first off, in this year, in 2025, we're going to kick off with the US Lunar Core and Roscosmos. They're going to be in the core box. But there's also going to be different other sets than just the basic infantry and elite infantry. We're going to have some mecha, we're going to have some vehicles, we're going to have some attachments that you can pimp up your infantry with. So those 2 factions are very complete when they reach the market now here with the first wave. And then in Q1 in 2026, we're going to follow up with 2 additional factions, which are going to be China and Europe. And
You're going to have different play styles.
Yeah, I mean, there's different strategies and also different tactics that's going to be useful. And I mean, if we look at the US Lunar Corps first of all, that's a very mobile faction, very tech pristine faction. They have a very advanced satellite system on the moon, so the surface infantry can tap into all that intel and they can move faster and they can really cover a lot of ground. Whereas Roscosmos is more reliant on basically a meat wall of infantry and being very close combat oriented, and they can really kick some butt in close contact. But the Americans have a lot of heavy weapons and arsenal to counter that. So they would be.
So it's not going to be just a shooting game, even though it's the future. Is also in melee combat is a big thing.
Yeah, definitely. And besides what's going on the battlefield, you also have a political plug-in where you can manipulate and influence the battle through a political angle. And those two political dimensions, the Roscosmos political dimension and the US Lunar Corps political dimensions, also play differently. So there's a lot of faction flavor and different approach to how to play. But I would generally say that a very offensive player would probably play the US Lunar Corps, whereas a player that is more hesitant and wants to see what his opponent is doing before he answers, he would play the Roscosmos, I think. Very early on, we looked at what kind of mecha would be used in a what-if scenario on the moon, what would be plausible, still with a twist of sci-fi, still with a twist of imagination, but we tried to make it something that would be close to what could really happen.
But still you won't walk around on the moon surface with a big robot arms and flinching each other.
Exactly.
It's not something that's going to happen like it.
What we did, we constructed a series of exoskeletons. They're called basically, it's basically a robot suit that you strap on as a pilot. Kind of like if you saw the first Alien movie, I think it's the first one.
Avatar also, right?
Yeah, where she's got this like big robot walker.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of inspiration from traditional sci-fi and with a flavor of Lunar Wars. Yeah, but each faction has their own exoskeletons and also vehicles and stuff like that. Yeah.
So do we have a favorite miniature, and what makes it special?
Well, I mean, I have a lot of favorites. There's so many. I mean, it's a bunch of great miniatures, but when I saw the Ares exoskeleton for the first time, it's a process of feeding some prompts to Bob, and then Bob would be working on it for a week or two, and then I would get an email with the preview. And when I saw that preview, I was just like, okay, that is
there's something extra.
The poster boy of the game, and it's also the one that
I also feel the same thing about the Roscosmos, the crew post mecha.
Oh yeah, the crew
because I really like those big chunky dreadnoughts, and I painted one, and there's a lot of space for battle damage and metal pieces and stuff. So that's my favorite, I think. Yeah.
I mean, it's I think they're very different. The two mechas, they're very different. Where you see that the US Lunar Corps version is really high tech, whereas the Roscosmos version again looks like something they found the spare parts in the scrapyard, and then they kind of welded it together, and now they got this battle machine going across the moon.
All right. Another thing to talk about in a project like this is actually the illustrations, because they're also gonna sell the project and makes it feel alive. We actually get to feel the characters and the units. And could you put some words about the importance of having a good illustrator on the project?
Definitely. I mean, it makes all the difference. I wrote a lot of lore, but bringing that into life, making it, take that vital step into reality in the imagination of whoever is looking at the project, it's such an important step to find the right illustrator. Not only somebody who is skilled in terms of graphic design and who can communicate that, but also somebody who understands the universe that I'm trying to communicate. I found a fantastic collaborator in Vuk, very
from Europe.
Very talented a guy who I was so lucky to meet online, and he was incredibly sold on the project immediately, and always kind of understood where I wanted to go with this grim, dark, near future kind of dystopian development for lunar colonization.
We talked a lot about it because as the graphic designer in this game, I really felt that you need to connect to the minifigures and to the heroes and all. And for me, looking at some cool illustrations also on the unit cards and boxes and everything it's going to make the thing come alive. Going from your lore that you wrote for several years and actually turned it into some piece of art. It's been an amazing journey, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it took about a year, I think, from when we started until we were, basically covered on all the ground elements of the visual universe. It took about a year, so it's been an incredible journey, and it's been so much fun, and I'm really happy and also very proud to finally be able to share it with everybody who's seen the project now, and a huge thanks to Book for creating all these beautiful elements, and to you guys, Roskilde, to really put it together in what we see on the Kickstarter page
to a full campaign. So really seeing these cool illustrations of the Roscosmos and the US Lunar Corps, but how about the Chinese and the Europeans? Is it all ready, or how's the pipeline about it?
Yeah, so I mean, 2025 is going to be all about getting the core box into the market together with the Roscosmos and the US Lunar Corps, the two basic factions. And then in Q1 2026, we're going to have a crowdfunding for the two follow-up factions, China and Europe. So some part of it is developed.
Mainly the lore?
Mainly the lore. The lore is developed about 50 years into the future, so there's plenty of things coming. I can talk a little more about that later, but in terms of what's coming on short term, we'll have more units for the US Lunar Corps. We will have more units for the Roscosmos coming. We will have additional units for the CLN, the political plug into the game.
Yes.
So you would have more diversity, more tactical diversity there. And we also have a parallel range, which is an orbital game. So you could combine the tabletop lunar surface game with another tabletop game which is orbital oriented. So spaceships.
Several projects coming along.
Yeah, definitely. Yes. The lore is written as a backbone where we are going to develop several games around that backbone.
Yeah, and the first core box is the second Lunar War.
It's the second Lunar War. I mean, if you take your time, have a Coke or a cup of coffee and watch the lore video on YouTube or on the Kickstarter page. It will take you through where we are today and to the 2030s and 2040s through the first Lunar War, which is basically just like an overheating of a political situation. Then they take two steps back and try to solve things, but it ends up like it always ends up. Somebody got to fight over the resources, and the second Lunar War breaks out in the epic battle in Schrödinger's crater. But it's all covered in a lore video in a really nice fashion. So dive into the lore video and have a look at it. Yeah.
You talked a little about the CLN, and that brings me to what makes Lunar Wars different from other tabletop games. I know there's a couple of things that's really important for this game.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we had an existing gaming engine back in 2022 that was funded and really had a good player base, which was Eagles of Empire. It was a historical skirmish game, and we took I think the most well-functioning parts of that when we gave it a modernizing and a twist towards what we would see in a zero gravity combat scenario. But I think the real charm is the economy system in the game, where you have what you call an escalating encounter. So you don't just meet up with two armies, you kind of have the spearhead of each army, then you go onto the table, you get some resources, get some objectives, and you get an engine rolling. And as that develops, you have to see what your opponent is doing, because there's an in-game dynamic where you have to either buy victory points, reinforce with troops, and get more objectives, more resources. Boost the troops you have to push.
I know you've been a guy who played video games and drawn some experience from that.
Definitely, there are some really good, I think, games out there where we have escalating encounters where you build bases, get objectives, and you push each other. And I wanted to implement that in a miniature wargame, which is my, everyday hobby scenario.
So doing a game, you can actually escalate the size of your army by controlling different points on the tabletop and bringing in more and more armies to make a victory.
And it's not always having the biggest army that will win the day, because you always have to keep an eye on how many victory points your opponent has been accumulating. So even though you have a big army, maybe your opponent has done some shenanigans in the politics of Lunar Wars, or maybe they've been out early and got a good amount of command points they convert.
Yes, you can either buy victory points or new units, and that's the balance all the time.
There's an in-game economy that you have to keep track of to win the overall game. Yeah.
And there's also another thing in the game that's actually make this games a little different from typical war games, and that's the political piece of it.
Yeah, so you can play the game straight out the box. It comes with base units and rulebook and all that in the core box. But then we have an expansion which is called the CLN, the Council of Lunar Nations, also covered in the lore. And that is a political plugin where you have a political character, somebody who is your representative in the Council of Lunar Nations, and with that person you can do all kinds of shenanigans. You can influence the game table, you can either assassinate your opponents, delegate to the council, and you can do all kinds of...
we both play a lot of Song of Ice and Fire, and it's actually how the NCU board...
There's some flavor from, if you know Song of Ice and Fire, you played that game, and you played that...
you played
the NCU,
Littlefinger or Varys or Sansa, or any political figure that's not on the battlefield.
There is some difference, I think, to those mechanics and what you see here, but it's similar. It's an off-table political dimension of the game, which will influence what's actually going on the battlefield. But you can also push each other's political delegates out of the game, and you can influence and so on. So there's a whole aspect, if you like to, if you've played a few games and you want to spice up or create a deeper tactical experience, you can do that with the CLN.
So it's actually just not another 40k game. There's actually some major differences. It's also a lighter game. It's what you see is what you get. It's easy, fast.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that's really intuitive about the gaming engine is the moral system, where you have a 3 unit strength, 3 miniature, basic unit.
Okay.
So it will hit and save on 4+. When you have full unit strength of 3, if you lose 1 unit strength, you hit and save on 5+. You lose another one, you only have 1 man left in the squad, you hit and save on 6s. So it's very visual. You can always see by just looking at your basic unit what's the hit and save value of that.
You don't have to flipping a book. You can actually see in the tabletop.
Definitely. It's a deep system in terms of tactical diversity, because there's so many upgrades and there's so many units and there's so many things you can do with each unit in terms of attachments and weapon upgrades. But the basic of the game is very straightforward. There's not a lot of rulebook flipping, and it's in that way it's a nice, easy game to step into. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we basically went through my questions here. So I don't know if there's anything you think has been unsaid already, or...
Well, I think jump in and have a look at the GameFound page, the Kickstarter page. We are crowdfunding on both those this year, 2025. Have a look at it, and
also Cult of Pain. You just briefly mentioned them.
Yeah. They'll be doing a painting tutorial of my favorite miniature, the RX Exo miniature. So have a look at the Cult of Pain and see what Henry's been doing to that miniature over there.
All right. Nice to have you here, and hopefully it's going to be exciting 2025 with this new game.
For sure it will. Yeah. Thank you.